Welcome to the National Drug Screening video blog series. I'm Joe Reilly, president of National Drug Screening, and I am pleased to have a guest with me today, Mr. Greg Henderson from Federal Drug Testing Services. Hello, Greg. How are you?
Hey, glad to be here.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
Today's topic is FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, drug and alcohol testing, regulations and updates and compliance. So businesses that are regulated by the FAA are required to have an FAA-specific drug and alcohol testing program that follows both DOT guidelines for the testing processes and other nuances that are specified under FAA-specific regulations. So, Greg, real quick, a little bit about yourself for our audience.
So, again, thanks for having me here, Joe. Your team is awesome down here in Melbourne, Florida. It's my first time ever coming to your spot.
Yeah,
After
absolutely.
knowing you for many years.
Usually we see at conferences, we see each other.
Yeah, I never got to see you in your house. So, and he treated me to lunch. So, so Greg Henderson, Federal Drug Testing Services. I'm a former FAA Drug and Alcohol Compliance Enforcement Inspector, a former Department of Interior Drug and Alcohol Program Coordinator. And what I did there was overseeing the drug testing programs for Department of Homeland Security Headquarters, the IRS Criminal Division, Justice Management Department, and United States Attorney's Office. So I was one that was on call for the White House in the event of testing, needed to be there, and actually oversaw the changeovers from one administration to the other. And former military, did testing program management under the United States Army, under the DOD guidelines. And now I just own my own company, Federal Drug Testing Services, where I provide consulting and training under the FAA HHS guidelines and now the international ruling. Awesome.
So we're going to talk today real specific about FAA. Here at National Drug Screening, we do service FAA-regulated businesses with drug testing programs, consortium management, which is required, random testing as part of that consortium management, policies, and basically keeping companies in compliance. So it's great to have you, Greg, because from your perspective as an FAA inspector, hopefully we can share some information with our audience to keep them out of trouble and where they don't get fined. So let's just start with what types of businesses are required to implement an FAA drug and alcohol testing program?
Well, any entity that is doing safety-sensitive functions as it pertains to the aviation world, and I'm talking pilots, flight attendants, maintenance, preventive maintenance, dispatchers, ground security coordinators. Those it's 9 categories of individuals. So if you're providing service under any of those entities, your program have to have a drug and alcohol program.
Okay, so that includes like major airlines like Delta, American, JetBlue, and so forth. Okay. What other types of businesses fall under these regulations that are not the common airlines that everybody would know of?
Yeah, so you're talking like repair stations.
Okay.
If you're providing any type of maintenance or preventive maintenance, and when we talk about like preventive maintenance, we're talking about whether you're cleaning the aircraft under certain categories, whether you change a tire off of it, but it's not a brand new tire and you refurbish a tire. So those things are like preventive maintenance. Anything like your staffing companies who provide, service to a company who do, where they're not actually employees of the company, but they're providing, work on behalf of the company in those safety sensitive sightseeing, air tour companies, and the contractors who will be providing maintenance that are not in that employer's drug program.
Okay, so let's focus on the repair stations for a minute. They have some type of certificate?
Right. So the common misunderstanding, Joe, is that most the companies don't really understand what these certificates are.
I don't.
So you have a repair station, which they have an operation specification number, and that comes from the Flight Standard District Office, better known as FSDO. And they give them a operations certificate called an Alpha 449. So an Alpha 449 is saying that you are a repair station, and this particular certificate says that you have to have a drug program. And if you don't implement the program prior to conducting safety-sensitive functions, that's going to be a financial penalty, right? So then you have another certificate. It's not really a certificate. It's called a contractor registration. And so if a company who does not maintain a Alpha 449 repair station, but they're providing maintenance service, they have to have a valid contractor registration. And that contractor registration has an expiration date on it. So companies have to make sure that if you're using a repair station with a contractor registration, that they have to check that expiration date.
Okay.
Now you have the different combinations of a contractor registration and an Alpha 449. So I'm not trying to get too complicated with you guys, but I do want to kind of go more into depth because it's very important on how the relationships of these certificates play in the role of a company like yours. So when you have a company who has a contractor registration, they can also have multiple Alpha 449 repair stations under one contractor registration number. So it's going to come into play as they begin to merge these certificates, or they buy another certificate that they're going to have to drug test these companies as they merge these certificates together. And that's where a company like yours come into play to make sure that you're testing them accordingly based on their certificate and the movement of their certificates.
Okay, so just for example, we get calls sometimes from a repair station, but I guess previously they weren't really doing aircraft maintenance and preventive maintenance, but now they got a contract with, let's say, an airline or somebody, and they've been told they got to get this drug and alcohol testing program going. What's their first step? Is there a form they submit, or how do they get registered with the FAA?
It depends on the certificate that they're applying for. So if they're trying to get an actual repair station certificate, they have to go through the Flight Standard Office.
Okay.
And if they're trying to get a contractor registration, then they go through drug abatement. So they go through the drug abatement, whatever that is, drug abatement at FAA.gov website to submit for the contractor registration. So it just depends on what they want to provide and what certificate they're going to go for. That's
and
the
now,
first
so
step.
these businesses now, once they're registered, they get a number from the FAA or something, certificate number?
They get a certificate number and a contractor or a contractor registration
number.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the FAA tells us all the time as a TPA and a consortium not to start doing anything for them unless we have a number.
That is the very first thing you need.
So we usually send them the form. I guess the form we send them is for the contractor registration because I know they submit it to drug abatement.
Yeah.
Other than these repair stations, Part 145, and we talked about major airlines, of course. I think you mentioned also like sightseeing operations. Helicopters, do they fall into this?
They all do.
They all do.
Well, because you have a different sightseeing certificate, because you can have one who is what we call a Part 91-147, which is a sightseeing tour. So you would see that like in Vegas or, more like Florida, Orlando.
Grand Canyon,
yeah. But then you can also have a Part 135 tour, company as well, just depend on the size of the operation and how far out they fly. And there's other specifications depending on the certificate when it comes to the helicopter touring company.
Okay. So all these certificate holders, businesses that we just mentioned, they're all required to have an FAA drug and alcohol testing program?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so can they do that themselves?
They can. It's not a recommendation to it, but the regulations doesn't say that they have to have a third-party consortium. It's just in your best interest to actually have a third-party consortium to do it, because it becomes very complicated if you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to be subject to some major penalties if you get it wrong.
Okay, Greg, so we're talking about the consortium / third-party administrator, commonly known as CTPAs, which are the businesses like mine, National Drug Screening, that provides drug and alcohol testing services to the FAA-regulated employer. Does the FAA approve the consortium TPAs?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, because it's not that they actually approve, but you're going to have to be audit ready, where you're going to have to meet certain requirements. Do you have the computer system to do the random testing? You know, are you having certain processes in place, so when they come out and audit on behalf of your client, are you set up to do these particular things? But I don't know if they actually issue a certificate of approval or anything like that, but however, you have to meet particular, standards.
You kind of have to know what you're doing.
You got to know what you're doing. And so in order for you to be in business all these years, you have to meet certain standards and requirements, because you do get audited. And it's different from the FAA won't recommend a CTPA, but however, you get audited, and that is, to me, your approval, right? That they're going to come out and make sure that you're in compliance. So if you're operating to this date and have had inspections in the past, then that means the FAA has found you credible as a CTPA if you're still operating.
Tell us about the employers that are subject to these regulations and need to be in compliance. Are they subject to audits?
Yeah, you guys are going to get audited.
Going to get audited.
Yeah, it's a matter of when.
Okay.
But the CTPAs are part of the audit process.
Okay, but the employers also, right?
The employers are definitely.
Okay.
Going to.
And have you seen fines for non-compliance?
On a daily basis.
Really? Okay. And what's the range of fines from a dollar amount?
It varies. Just it depends on the complexity of the violation. From what I see, whether you're careless, reckless, or intentional, they kind of put it in those categories, and the egregiousness of it, or was it a one-time thing? So it kind of varies, but it can start from the low thousands all the way up to the millions.
Wow.
It just depends on the.
Okay. And you mentioned that the FAA does audit the TPAs also that provide this type of work. So if you've never done any FAA work, you might want to do a lot of homework before you start doing, or maybe they could call me and I could help them out. Or they could call you and you could help them out.
You could help them out.
All right, interesting. So kind of on a bigger picture, what are 5 or 6 major things that are part of the program that employers really need to look at implementing?
It's interesting that you asked me that, because what I normally put out in my training is what I call the 6 deadly sins.
Okay.
So it's pre-employment testing. You have and that's with performance. So performance meaning when you actually perform a safety sensitive function and they get the proof of it. Then there's, pre-employment without performance, and that can come in many different, variations of violations. Then you have not adding them to the pool, the random drug testing pool, in a timely manner according to the regulation. The other one is records checks, violations on records checks, to not have done the background checks for the individuals at a certain time period after they perform safety-sensitive functions. You have your return to duty and follow-up violations. So if you are a second-chance employer, that is probably the biggest fine that you're going to get off of that violation chart, is not conducting the return to duty and follow-up program accordingly with the SAP. And then also the failure to implement. So if you failure to implement your drug and alcohol program, which goes into the contractor registration and the Alpha 449 certificate. So if you fail to do that before you perform safety sensitive functions. So those are probably the top 6 consistent violations that.
Okay. And what about, is a policy a requirement?
It's a requirement. The complexity part with the policy and understanding of the policy is that it is a part of their audit. But what you put in your policy is going to be governed based on your company operation outside of the initial requirements from the regulation. And then you may want to have two separate policies, a company policy and a DOT, policy.
Yeah. We always recommend two separate policies, non-DOT and DOT. And if they also have trucks, they also have a third policy for federal motor carrier. What are you kind of alluded to this too, but what are some of the common pitfalls that you see that employers are not really things where they could have done it better?
I think that training and education is probably the biggest pitfall of it all. I think that, in my opinion, when I travel around, the biggest thing is the understanding of these regulations, and it starts with the education, part of it, and talking to, experts like yourself or myself or going around and first figuring out what is these regulations, what am I required to do, and am I doing it accordingly, and making sure that they're set up proper.
Okay. And going back to repair stations, I meant to ask, it could be like a 1 or 2 person operation, right?
The funny thing, Joe, is that some of the biggest violations that I've seen outside of major corporations is single owner operators.
Yeah.
Because they spend more time trying to save money, and they cut a lot of corners by trying to save money. And when you have things that require transparency, trust, and when you are your own entity, it's hard to to be honest with yourself sometimes, because you just going on with your day. So single owner operators is probably a challenge, and mom and pops who are family owned, they tend to try to want to look out for each other a lot, and they find themselves in situations as well.
Yeah, I've seen that also. So just kind of wrapping up, really good information. Really appreciate you being here, Greg. And any final words that you want to give to our audience about this topic?
Well, first, I should have did this in the beginning, that I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving any
Me neither.
legal advice or legal guidance to anybody.
Okay.
These are just my understanding from my years of experience and what I've seen going across. So I just wanted to make sure that I put that out, and I forgot to do that in the beginning. But on the topic itself, I just want to let everybody know that the industry is constantly changing and is always going to be changed. So you have to stay abreast with what's going on and what's changing and move accordingly to what is currently in the regulation and not by what word of mouth is. So just kind of keep your ear to the industry, and change is inevitable. Just don't, get bent out of shape about it. Just kind of reassess yourself and move in accordance to safety.
Okay. And only because it's a hot topic, I wanted to mention that marijuana is still a Schedule I substance, and it is prohibited in the DOT and specifically also the FAA drug testing. And it doesn't matter if you got THC in your system, the metabolite of THC, and you test positive, you're going to have a violation, and you'll be removed from your safety-sensitive position.
Correct.
Here at National Drug Screening, we do have FAA clients. We've been doing it actually for about 20 years. Usually smaller companies, like you mentioned, even some that are individual owner-operators. We do a lot of repair stations. We can set up a policy. We can do supervisor training, which is required. We can do DER training. We can set up the drug testing with the pre-employment, random, post-accident, reasonable suspicion, follow-up, return to duty. For smaller companies, we can put them in a consortium, which is the random program with multiple people, multiple companies all together. So we can help those employers out there with the FAA-required drug and alcohol testing program. You can see we have a web page on our website. You can see it on the screen, which is going to be our nationaldrugscreening.com website, and then we have a specific FAA page. You can also contact National Drug Screening at 866-843-4545, and any of our drug testing specialists can help you get started. I'm Joe Reilly. I can help you. I work with a lot of FAA employers personally, happy to be of assistance. And if you like this information, ring the bell, hit subscribe, make comments, thumbs up, all that good stuff, all that YouTube good stuff, Greg. And I want to thank Greg for being with us. Thanks a lot, Greg.
Thank you, Jeff.
And check out our next video blog. We're always posting new ones. Thank you.